Hi, I'm Eric Johnson here at the Owen Graduate School of Management, and I'm here today with David Farr. David is the CEO and chairman of Emerson, joining the company in 1981 out of Owen and working his way through all the management ranks, really played roles all over the country, all over the world, and now CEO since 2000. Welcome today, David. It's great to have you here.
It's great to be here, and it's truly great to be in the non-morgue building. I never had the unique opportunity to take a class here, but it is nice to be here and to have a chance to talk to the students today.
That early history of Owen that everyone reminds me of when I'm on the road, it's great. Yeah. Well, tell us a little bit about strategy. You know, you've been running this company for a long time and think a lot about strategy. How do you define strategy?
You know, from my standpoint, strategy is all about where you want to take the company, where you want to take the business, where you want to take the organization, and then figuring out how to place those stones out there and what those stones look like and how you execute around those stones, that path to where you want to take it from a growth, size, businesses. That's how I think about strategy, thinking through those issues.
So if there were kind of three things in your mind that you would tick off in creating a strategy, or if you were evaluating one of your divisional guys and they were bringing their strategy to you, what three things would you look for them to touch?
Number one, I think an individual that can think broadly, has a broad perspective and see a broader view of the world and the issues around business. Number two, an individual that's not afraid of destroying the past, but is willing to recreate the future and use the past as that platform. And number three, a person that has the energy level and the passion to want to do it and complete it. A lot of people can plan around strategy, a lot of people can do things, but then executing it, they fail. And I look for those three things within people when I think about strategy and vision.
Yeah. So let's talk about execution for a minute. Certainly in your time, you've had cases where you started into a strategy and something had to change.
Exactly.
Something broke down. Give us an example of that, and how do you recover?
From my perspective, I'm a long tenure CEO. I finished my 15th year. I'm on my 16th year as CEO. Probably have 3 or 4 or 5 more years. The issue of any CEO, given the dynamic business world today, will embark upon a strategy, and the markets change. The customers, technology, it changes even more today than ever before. So what happens with us? About 8 years ago, we embarked upon a strategy around what we call our network power business, dealing with telecommunications, dealing with data centers. And technology's changed. Yeah. The way data centers are managed today, the way people utilize the internet and the cloud or the large data centers has changed fundamentally. So I have a business that serves that marketplace, but we serve that marketplace one way. The whole market's shifted right. We try to shift with it. It's not working. It's a great business, but it's better off being by itself. So we're going to spin it off here. And it's a very large business, about $5 billion. So
wow. That's a big pivot.
So you have to pivot, and I spent 14 months with the board talking about it, talking about what we see happening, what we should do with this business, what's right for that business, and what's right for Emerson, and where we want to reinvest those monies. So you have to pivot, and this is my third pivot as a CEO, and probably my last pivot, to be honest. But it's important for CEOs to see that. And the CEOs that have the capability of seeing that and the capability of debating it and arguing and making that decision are the ones that will succeed over the long term.
So let's talk about leadership a little bit. Okay. You've certainly had your share of leadership roles and seen lots of leaders around you both succeed and fail. Share a couple lessons on leadership.
From my perspective, what I tell the young people coming into MBA schools and then coming out and going into businesses like an Emerson, I tell people to look, what you need to do is have an impact. So as a leader, you have to see opportunities, you have to recognize those opportunities, and then you have to have an impact. So if you can make that impact and make something different and succeed at it, you'll make a mark. And then once you make a mark, you can go from there. So I always tell my young individuals coming in, they say, well, how do I get ahead? How do I do this? I say, you make an impact. You figure out what you can do to help a company, help an industry, and make that happen, and you'll be recognized. So that's one thing I always tell my people to focus on. Look for that opportunity and make an impact. In times like we are right now, where there's a lot of discontinuity in industry and companies cutting back, young people if you're smart, you think about how do I make an impact. Number two, I always talk to them, as young leaders in particular, I say, look, you've got to take some risk. If you come out and you always try to play the safe route, you will not become an effective leader. Effective leaders take risk. They know how to evaluate risk. They know the pluses and minuses, and they know when to take it. And you will fail. Don't worry about failing. As I tell them, you're going to fail. Just don't fail too often. But I encourage people to fail, encourage to try, because that's the only way you learn. And you learn upon those things. And the third thing I always tell people very quickly when they're talking about leadership is to raise your hand. When individuals like myself and running a large business or a large corporation, we're looking for individuals that want to volunteer, that want to get engaged, and are willing to put something on the line. As a young leader at Emerson, coming out of OGSM at the time, we went through the 81-82 recession. Within my department, there was only 4 of us. Half of them were let go. And so I went to my boss and I said, look, I tell you what, I'll do both jobs for a while. And that got recognized by the COO and then the CEO. And within 18 months, I was working for the COO and the CEO. And because I was willing to take on that responsibility and work extra hard and do something, it made a big impact. And I gave me a little launch to show that I could do something. So I encourage the young MBAs today to take that risk, have an impact, raise your hand, and show people that you can do something. That's what's important.
Well, 35 years at Emerson, that's a piece of work, right? That's a
piece
long
of
stretch.
It's a long stretch.
And these days, millennials, they really don't seem to have that kind of focus to stay with a company.
Yeah.
You think that's good or bad? Is that?
Clearly, as an individual, it's had the unique opportunities inside Emerson, which I have had. That's why I stayed for 35 years. But from my perspective, I look for people that want to commit, but they may have a decision that they're not getting those opportunities, or the strategy, or they don't like the strategy, or they don't like where we're going. So I'm not totally discouraged if after 5 or 8 years, after a huge investment, these individuals, they move on. It does bother me when I see them move on to what I would say questionable decisions, and where you've had, you might be what I consider a unique individual, high potential individual, and we put you out there learning these things, and then you take a jump into a different, unusual place. That bothers me a little bit, because then I start questioning, maybe that guy or gal, maybe they weren't really that good. Yeah. But I still see millennials that come in that are still there 10 or 12, 15 years, and if they get that opportunity, it's all about the opportunity, they'll stick. But it is unusual, the tenure that companies like we've had over the years, and we still do. If you look at my leadership team, it's not uncommon to have people that have been here for 25, 30, 40 years. And I still think the millennials will still be there, and they'll be working, but they may jump around a little bit more. We'll see. We'll see.
Well, David, thanks so much for spending the day with us at Vanderbilt.
Good, I appreciate it. Thank you very much for having me.